Claire, it's so nice to meet you.
Likewise. I think
Thank you so much for coming along to Boxwood, Australia. I've heard so much about you, and I'm just crushed that I can't be there to meet you and
oh,
have sung in the Sea Airs Choir. Tell me what was going on with that. How did you find the group?
fabulous. I'm always of the opinion that if you've got a willing group of participants and singers who have chosen to turn up and be there, then they're ready to be challenged and ready to be thrown in all sorts of new directions. And so that's exactly what I did. I threw some challenges at them. I did it all with the best sense of fun that I could bring into the room. And it all went well, I think.
Great. So you did the usual Boxwood mix of traditional music thrown in with some Baroque singing as well?
I did indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. And did they take that in stride?
They sure did. Yeah, they were great. I like, once again, I feel like part of key is to make things as interesting for people, and it's welcomed. And even if something is hard and they don't quite get there, then you don't make a thing of it. We did Shularun, a traditional Irish song, which I arranged for sopranos, altos and basses and harp. So we had Andy Rigby accompanying on the harp. And I included, so just as an interesting arrangement point, I like to put body percussion into my arrangements. And this particular one emulated a bowron. So it came out like, to give a bit of a demo, shoo, shoo, shularun. So on and so forth. The other one that was my choice to do with the big choir, where we had the Sea Airs choir and just basically almost the full cohort of everyone who's come to Boxwood who was interested in singing with the choir, was a round of Three Country Dances by Thomas Ravenscroft.
Yes.
Multiple dance songs layered upon one another. That fit together like this amazing musical puzzle.
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
Now, do those? I'm curious. So many of Ravenscroft's things work as a round independently. Does each line work as a round with itself, or do the four lines just work as one choral piece?
That's a very good question. I've never actually broken it down and tried to sing it. I'm going to.
Yeah. Because it says round, but I've never done that either. But I was just curious whether if you started 2 bars in or 1 bar in, on the top line, would it actually work as a round?
Well, that's an excellent question. I can't believe I've actually never thought to try it as a proper round, because in this case, it's 4 different songs that are put together that you start at different times, thus making it a round. But the option that you just said, I'm going to go home and try this. I'm feeling really silly that I haven't already, actually. Yeah. Anyway. Oh, we lost Barnard, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Now tell me a little bit about your harp playing. When did you start playing the harp? And was Celtic harp your first introduction to the harp, or did you actually start out playing concert orchestral harp?
No, definitely did not start out playing concert orchestral harp. I started out playing concert orchestral French horn.
Is that right?
That's a different story for another time. No, it is actually part of this story. I finished my music degree where I majored on the horn, and my heart wasn't 100% in it, and I did some travelling, and I went to my first Irish music session in Ireland and went, what is this? And that was basically it. I remember an old chap sitting on a stool, and he closed his eyes and he sang just a beautiful Shannon style song from the heart. And when I'd come from this intense musical degree where everything had to be perfect and you've got conductors beating you up, not obviously not. When I say that, I mean they're yelling at you, and this has got to be better, and that. And I was just totally enthralled by the fact that this whole pub just hushed to hear this old man sing a song, and it wasn't like any musically, technically anything to behold. It was about the heart in it. Anyway, the harp came along at about the same time. I was given a harp for my birthday, for a significant birthday from my parents, just a little baby one made by, it's an Andy Rigby harp. And I started accompanying myself singing, and it all grew from there. Yeah. And then I came home and found the National Celtic Festival at Port Arlington, just up the road, and met people, and I found myself in this amazing community of traditional Celtic, Scottish and Irish and other playing musicians.
Now, is the French horn still part of your musical universe?
It is. It comes out more in a contemporary setting. I play in a German Umpar band.
Okay.
and in also a bit of a spin-off band, so same group of musicians but different style of music, in a French band called the Escargots. So it's not playing a major role, but I still enjoy pulling it out, and I sort of work on my improvisatory skills as a horn player these days. I love the orchestral music. I do miss it. It's magnificent. But in terms of what I'd like to be, the world I'd like to be involved in, I mean, choirs are one of my favourite things. So it's hard to do both, and I choose choir.
Absolutely. Now, you lead a couple of choirs, do you, in the Melbourne region?
I've had a bit of a rest from it for a little while, also because I had a baby about 1.5 years ago.
So I heard. Congratulations.
Thank you. She was at Boxwood 2 years. Was it 2 years ago when you were here? Or was it 3 years ago?
It was 2 years ago. She
was at Boxwood in my belly. But getting back to the choirs, I'm just about to become a co-director of a choir with an organisation called Play It Forward, which does sort of more holistic outreach community stuff. I've directed choirs in schools for years, and co-directed. I've had small positions here and there. That's where I am with that. Haven't got my own fully fledged group. I do, however, have three vocal ensembles. One's called the Velvetones. It's a jazz vocal quartet. Another one is called Thursday's Child. It's an overlap between folk music, so we do a lot of traditional Irish and Scottish stuff and jazz. And another band which is my project called Cochol or Cochal, as we often mispronounce it. It's often you often hear it called that. And that's also traditional Irish and Scottish. So when you're in those, it's a bit hard to run your own choir full time, but the full time choir, it'll happen eventually.
Wow, you are busy. All of that on top of motherhood. Mothering a 1.5 or 2 year old. That is very impressive indeed.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we're going to have some tunes from you.
Yeah. All right. This is a tune by James Oswald, who was particularly prolific in the Baroque trad crossover, and Shane's writing to her Oswald tunes as well. It's called "She's Sweetest When She's Naked." And I may have been a little bit disappointed to discover that it's not what the title isn't what it implies. It's actually about whiskey, meaning that it's sweetest when there's nothing in it, no ice, no nothing, straight up whiskey.
Okay.
I know, right? And I thought it'd be particularly there was a lot of whiskey going on last night here at the session, so.
that's so beautiful, Claire.
It's such a nice tune. What I love about that is that syncopation in the melody. And yeah, it's nice to sit into.
Yeah, well, I and a lot of the Boxwood folks are well acquainted with Oswald's music because he published a huge series of volumes for the flute. In fact,
Yes.
some of the earliest music, traditional Scottish music that was ever published was published by Oswald for the flute, the pocket companion.
Oh,
And
wow,
I think
cool.
I think that's in there if I'm not mistaken. So great to hear that on the harp. Man, your phrasing is so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for saying so.
Absolutely. I can it just comes right across. Such a beautiful playing. Now, any chance you'd share a song with us? And
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
one we could learn.
Absolutely.
What are some of your favorite songs you're singing these days?
I'm a huge Robert Burns fan. I have been for a long time. I just think his melodies are just glorious. Um, and this the use of and of course his text, and that's a given, being Burns. The love songs he just wrote are just they get you in here.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite songs, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of how you fall in love with a tune or a song, and it might be your favorite tune or song for a little while, and then you kind of move on, and the other one takes a back seat. This one, it's called "My Love Is Like a Red, Red Rose." It's quite a famous one, and I fell in love with it, and I'm still in love with it. I think it's my favorite one ever.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, it's never going to move from number one. My love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. My love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. And fair art thou, my bonny lad, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, no 'twere 10,000 till all the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun, and I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of life shall run, and fare thee well, my holy love, and fare thee well, and I will love thee still, my dear, till all the seas gang dry. These are my
So beautiful. Thank you, Claire.
thank you. Yeah.
Now you also sing some jazz, you're saying.
I do. Yeah, I sort of dabbled in jazz really early on, and then came back to it a few years ago. that's where I mentioned before one of the vocal ensembles that I sing. The two of the vocal ensembles that I sing in. It's a lot of very jazz heavy, and I do a lot of solo stuff outside of that. So I've done programs where I've combined the two. I do a lot of gigging with a musician called Tony Gould, who's a jazz pianist, who shares a passion for traditional Irish music as well. And so we've collaborated a handful of times now, and that meeting of the jazz and the traditional songs is a beautiful thing. So hoping to do more of that.
So what do you find you have to balance when you're trying to combine or blend or find a path that works for you, doing traditional music, whose conventions are fairly set, and a style like jazz where really you're completely wide open?
I try and explore the harmony. So with jazz, the idea is that you can take a melody and a harmony in many different directions, but I feel like with traditional music, you want to remain true to a traditional melody or song, the melody in the song even. I'll focus on songs. So what I try and do, especially when I'm collaborating with the pianist Tony, is we both try and find harmonic options. So you're still holding on to that beautiful melody that everyone knows and recognizes, but you're exploring different things. So, for example, this is just a very simple example. I chucked a dominant seven chord. Well, actually, right through this is a whole lot of sevenths and ninths. They're pretty standard harmonizations and extensions, you might say. But I'll give you an example. I tried to chuck a surprise chord in just to take it give it a slightly different flavour.
Yeah.
Flavours, I think, is the word I'm looking for here. Give it jazz flavours with the harmony.
Yeah. I've heard some jazz singers talk about how they find traditional music or folk music to be just a bit too precious for them. And I'm just wondering if that's something that you kind of bump up against, because, your typical jazz style is, it doesn't quite try to milk phrases for maximum expressiveness.
Yeah, it's a different focus, isn't it? I think that's why I try and find other ways to bring those jazz flavors in. Something that there are different ways that you can do it. So I'm gonna use a different example of a song. It's a traditional Irish song called Sweet Carnock Bay, and I've taken it in a bit of a Latin direction. I'll give you the two different options. And so I've basically added a beat to every bar in the melody. So here's the original. Oh, the winter was rising on the hills and the mountains, and dark were the clouds o'er the deep rolling sea. I spied a fair lass as the daylight was dawning. She was asking the road to Sweet Carnock Bay. So that's what you might hear in a session, for example. It's a waltz, 3/4. I made it into 4/4. So it'll come out like, winter was rising o'er the hills and the mountains, and dark were the clouds o'er the... so on and so forth. I added some Latin beats. Oh, the winter was rising over the hills and the mountains. So I just gave it a Latin groove. Super simple bass line. I'm just using 1-3-5. And then I bung some body percussion in, or I'm going to do it on the harp, with harp percussion. So it comes out like this. Oh, the winter was rising over the hills and the mountains, and dark were the clouds o'er the deep rolling sea. So you might hear I'm still using all those that traditional ornamentation when I'm singing that melody. I've just put it into 4/4 and bung some Latin rhythms in.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I think it's a matter of thinking outside the box in terms of arrangement and flavors and tools and things that are at your disposal. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just curious because, there's many paths that you could find to combine musical genres like that, and it's just
Yeah.
fascinating to kind of dig a little deeper and get an
Yeah.
idea of how your brain works, and because
Uh-huh.
we're all musicians here,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's a topic that I think is of interest to a lot of folks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to do that song?
Yeah, sure. It's actually been picked up by choirs. I've arranged it for soprano, alto, bass, SAAA as well, and it's doing the rounds in choirs around the country because it works. Anyway, here it is. Oh, the winter was rising o'er the hills and the mountains, and dark were the clouds o'er the deep rolling sea. I spied a fair lass as the daylight was dawning. She was asking the road to sweet Carnock Bay. I said, my dear lass, I will surely tell you the road and the number of miles it will be. And if you consent, I'll convey you a wee bit, and I'll show you the road to sweet Carnock Bay. You turn to the right and go down to the churchyard, cross over the river and down to the sea. We'll stop in Queenscliff and have a wee drop there, just to help us along to sweet Carnock Bay. Here's a health to Pat Hamill, likewise the wee lassie, and to all the young laddies who're listening to me. And ne'er turn your back on a bonny wee lassie when she's asking the road to sweet Carnock Bay. There you go.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Really beautiful playing, beautiful
Thank
singing.
Thank you very much. You probably noticed I chucked it back in 3/4 at the end,
Yeah.
just to keep a hint of something traditional there, but only a hint, because then I went back to the percussion at the end in 4/4.
Claire, it's really fascinating to watch you play and to listen to you sing because it seems so effortless. So since we're all musicians here, I just want to ask you a little bit about how you think about rhythm, because I don't get the sense that you're tapping your feet as you play the way that a lot of trad musicians would play. Yet your harp accompaniment is super precise and super subdivided. A lot of rhythmic integrity going on in your playing there.
Oh,
So
thank you.
tell me just like as a musician, how are you thinking about rhythm on a piece like that?
So this took a lot of a piece like this takes building up in layers. So I'm not, to be honest, I'm not quite sure how or when the idea came to me to put it in 4/4. I think I was in the shower, to be honest, and I was messing around with some body percussion and it fell into 4/4. I think in terms of it ending up in that direction, it's through having sung and played different styles of music that they're in my language. They're automatically there. And I think that's what happened there. I didn't over evaluate this when I didn't go, I'm going to try this in 4/4. I was merely messing around with body percussion rhythms, and it fell into that. I used this basic rhythm. It was in a tune that I learnt from Katrina Mackay. And so I started singing with that rhythm using 2 chords. Oh, the winter was rising o'er the hills and the mountains. But that, of course, came after I went, because it felt right. And then I put that with that. Great. Yeah, good. It's the same thing anyway. And so I've got, essentially, there are 3 different things going on there. In terms of doing all 3 at the same time, singing, playing that bass line, and then tapping the rhythm with my right hand, that just took practice. So in terms of singing it, singing it and being able to do the percussion body percussion, that was already in me. When it comes to rhythm, I think it needs to be inside you before you can get it out there, which is why when I'm teaching and when I'm standing in front of a choir and people are, if the singers are struggling with the rhythm, I constantly defer to the body. I get people to tap out rhythms in their hands, in their chests, on their lap, whatever the case may be, and get them to sing at the same time. Until it becomes integral. So that's what I'm doing there. There's a lot of this going on, I know. So
yeah, exactly. And of course, the other thing that I hear is that your singing is actually very free and sort of legato and connected over top of something that is super subdivided and a bit spiky at the same time. So that's, as you say, definitely a pat your head and rub the belly kind of a thing.
That was just practice. That was repetition and breaking it down. I just broke down some elements there. I practiced all those elements. It took me a long time to be able to do that fluently. It took me forever. I still mess it up if I'm not concentrating.
Yeah.
There's nothing superhuman about it. It's merely practice. Yeah. Sorry. No, I'm not going to say sorry, because it means that anyone can get there. Yeah. If you work at something, anyone can get to a particular point, I believe.
So tell me a little bit about your trajectory. Where are you headed musically, and what are some projects you want to get your teeth sunk into?
I'd like to record an album with the pianist that I mentioned earlier, Tony Gould, of the Irish jazz, traditional Irish tunes and jazz crossover. That's also with a cellist called Louise Godwin, who, I don't know if she's been to Boxwood, but she'll get here eventually. So that's an album, a project that I'd like to do. I'd also, another one that's been on the horizon for a while. It initially started out as this isn't trad music related at all, but I want to record an album of mum and bub friendly jazz melodies and tunes for the harp and voice. And I recently decided that I'm about to go a completely different direction, by the way. I want to include some melodies that my late husband recorded a long time ago. I want to put them on. I want to arrange them with some harp and vocal harmonies in the background. And I would like that album to be basically, it's any sales from that album are going to go into a fund that I'm going to then donate to different charities, and that's something that I want to do in his memory. So still a mum and bub or just easy listening album. There's, I think, actually, I'm still deciding whether to include some traditional songs in it or not.
Yeah.
It might end up being that they'll creep in because they fit so beautifully in that setting. So yeah, that's something that's close to my heart that I would really like to do.
Well, we'll absolutely look forward to those. Well, thank you so much. It's been so fun to visit with you and hear your exquisite musicianship.
Well, thank you so much.
It's so great to have you with us here.